Австралийн Welcome.
Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр орой манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор НҮБ-ийн ногоон хөгжлийн програм болох Page гэж програмын дарга Боливийн иргэн ноён Оскар ГарсиаД оролцож байна.
Бразилийн Санта Катарина их сургуулиас Эдийн засгийн бакалавр, Нью Скүүл Их сургуулиас Бүтцийн Өөрчлөлтийн Удирдлагаар магистр, Боливийн Католик Их сургуулиас Бизнесийн удирдлагын магистр тус хүртсэн. Гарсиа нэгдсэн байгууллагын Хүрээлэн буй орчны хөтөлбөрийн Эдийн засаг худалдааны салбарын хөтөлбөрийн зохицуулагч болон зөвлөх нэгжийн ахлах юм. Тэрээр ногоон эдийн засаг санаачилгаанд стратеги боловсруулалт, бүсийн болон үндэсний хэмжээнд зөвлөгөөний дагуу гүйцэтгэх тал дээр зөвлөн ажилладаг. Гарсиа нэгдсэн байгууллагад ажиллаж эхлэхээс өмнө удирдлагын зөвлөгөөний проактив бүсийг үүсгэн байгуулж, ерөнхий захирлаар нь ажиллаж байсан. Тэрээр Интер Американ Хөгжлийн банк, нэгдсэн байгууллагын хөгжлийн хөтөлбөр, Хүн Амын Сан ба дэлхийн банк зэрэг байгууллагад ажиллаж байсан. Мөн Боливийн нийгмийн онцгой байдлын сангийн нөөц зохицуулалтын зохицуулагч, Худалдааны Бодлогын ерөнхий захирал байсан. Хөгжлийн үнэлгээ шинжилгээний талаар хэд хэдэн үнэлгээний тайлан болоод эрдэм шинжилгээний ажил нийтэлсэн.
Good evening, Sam.
Good evening.
So you are in Mongolia with a very important mission for Mongolia about the green development. Please tell us what's going on.
Thank you very much for the invitation to the program. I'm very happy to be in Ulaanbaatar. I come with the United Nations Environment Program with a program called Page, which is a partnership for action on green economy. And we are coming at the request of the Mongolian president. And Mongolia will be the first country to receive the support of the UN in the transition towards a more sustainable development pathway, more concretely to implement the green development strategy. In the Rio Plus 20 conference in 2012, the member states of the United Nations agreed that a green economy is a viable tool for achieving sustainable development and poverty reduction. And they made that agreement based on the recognition that current sustainable pathways are not longer available or tolerable because they are using badly the environment, and the development is not yielding good results for the people. It's not an inclusive development.
Okay, why Mongolia is to be the first country? How come?
Well, it's a matter of leadership. We see that one of the conditions to move and transition towards green economy is leadership at the highest level, and that is something that we have identified. And the executive director of UNEP, Mr. Achim Steiner, during the celebration of the Earth Day, agreed with the Mongolian president to launch this initiative in Mongolia. And Mongolia has a number of challenges, economic, social and environmental challenges, that makes it a good country to start with.
So you said leadership at the highest level.
Yes.
And you also said that green development is the only way to sustainable development now. See, when we talk about green development, we talk about more investment because that, and today, in particular poor countries where many poor people prefer to have first to eat. So how do you see that combination?
Yeah, for a long time there was a thinking that there was a trade-off. You could either grow or have a sustainable behavior. And the evidence from various analyses show that there is no trade-off between growing and growing green. And what do we mean by green? It's a development that really takes care of the nature, of the natural resources, in a way that allows the nature to recover itself from the extraction of human activities. And at the same time, it's a development that enables the people to benefit from the creation of new sectors that are now producing more value added to the economy than just the extraction of natural resources.
Please describe for us about the program page itself. What kind of things is to implement in this country, and why is that important?
Yes, page first is made out of, in Mongolia, out of 5 UN agencies. It is the United Nations Environment Program, the United Nations Industrial Organization, UNIDO, the International Labour Organization, ILO, and United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, which is the capacity development. And of course, as part of the UN system, we work very closely at the country level with the UNDP, the development program. With these 5 UN agencies, we will try to respond to the needs, and we will support the implementation of the Green Development Strategy as set by the Mongolian government. And I understand that Parliament is really considering its approval, and that may happen very soon. But what does the program bring? On one hand, it provides analytical tools to support decision making. For the transition towards a green economy, there are various policies that can be applied at different levels, at the level of fiscal policies, at the level of trade policies, or strengthening regulatory frameworks that would allow that transition. And before making those decisions, we provide some analysis in terms of what will be the long-term costs and benefits of those transitions, and we provide some quantitative information. Another dimension which is important to this is the job creation. So with this analysis, we will try to identify the jobs that will be created in the transition to a greener economy.
So this is first of all, partnership,
yes,
action for green economy, right?
Correct.
So in this UN organization in Mongolia, our government, and because under the leadership of our president, you will be making analysis where and how we have better green development. Have you been done already, that analysis, or it is just you starting it?
Well, we have conducted a stock-taking exercise. In the stock-taking exercise, we take a look at which are the main development challenges. On the economic front, there is the vulnerability to external shocks. We have seen how the changes in commodity prices affected the revenues of the state and of the private sector as well, affecting investment decisions in extractive industries in the country. At the same time, the level, although the country has grown very rapidly and a very important rates, those growing rates have not translated equally into poverty reduction. So we still have a quarter of the population living under the poverty line. And these are important challenges. But in addition to that, there are environmental challenges. The use of water as a scarce resource, either for production or consumption, is a matter of concern. And also the pollution, the air pollution that we have, particularly in the capital city, as well as the land degradation due to effects of climate change, but also to human activity. The land degradation is another serious threat. So that stock taking shows us that these challenges exist, but that there are already very important initiatives that are being taken by the Mongolian government, and we want to build on those to see how to further strengthen the national efforts to have a more green development.
Have you identified particular actions to any of them, like water, like pollution in the city, and you said also land degradation, which is happening now all around the country?
Yes, what we are trying to bring is a coherent approach to address all these issues, and therefore we want to conduct a more comprehensive analysis, and for that we use some methodologies called system dynamics, in which the social, the economic, and the environmental variables interact together, and we see how they feed into each other, and we identify feedback loops from the environmental side into the economy and the productive side, and as well how those have implications into the social sector. So we want to refine our analysis before being able to recommend concrete policy actions. But in other countries we have already identified a series of policies that could be applied. Those policies include, for instance, the reduction of tariffs for the import of cleaner technology. And cleaner technology is useful not only to production activities, but mainly there are cleaner ways to heat, to get heating, or even to produce energy. And so these are type of measures that could be applied. Additionally, there are also some fiscal measures that have to do with taxes and revenues for the state that could be applied. And Mongolia is a rich country in terms of natural resources, and therefore how these resources can be used to finance a more sustainable treatment of our natural resources.
Welcome. Well, then we need more investment, and we invite more foreign investment. And as soon as we regulate stronger and demand them more, that will be not easy to attract foreign direct investment, in particular at the current economic situation.
Yes, well, part of this, the analysis shows that there are some deficits in terms of infrastructure, that there are deficits in terms of energy, and therefore those investments will need to be done. The matter is, and a matter of concern is whether those initiatives will be invested in a sustainable way. Just to put an example, we know that building roads is important because those generate jobs, but there are roads that could be more environmental friendly than others, and it also does not have only to do with the design of the roads in terms of affecting ecosystems through which those roads may cross, but also the type of materials that can be used to have a better a more environmentally friendly investment.
Yeah, but it's again new materials, new technology. But before we go to these details, I would like to ask several other questions about your country and your background. You are from Bolivia, a landlocked country like Mongolia, rich with minerals, and how do you, I mean, you have studied initially, of course, a bit about Mongolia. You have been living in Bolivia. How does it reflect, say, this what you talk about is in Bolivia, for example? How do you see that? How much they have a commitment on that? Is it still something to go for them ahead, or please tell us about your country and environment.
Yes, first I must confess that I feel very much at home here in Mongolia. Because as you mentioned, Bolivia is also a landlocked country. It's a country with a very important cultural heritage, and therefore our customs are important for us, our habits. It's rich in natural resources, so we have also a mining sector, but also hydrocarbon and hydroelectric capacities. And all these aspects make it more similar to Mongolia. In the United Nations Environment Program, we have the mandate to identify different pathways towards sustainable development. And Bolivia happens to have a kind of an alternative pathway to sustainable development, which takes into account the respect of the nature, and we call it Mother Earth. And the new constitution of Bolivia even recognizes that the nature has some rights.
Oh.
Yes, that's a novelty. So not only people have rights, but also the nature.
When the constitution was adopted?
That was in 2008.
Under President Morales?
Under President Evo Morales, yes.
And how much is it accepted by ordinary citizens?
Oh, well, it's actually pretty much accepted because it's rooted into cultural traditions in the relationship that indigenous population have with the nature.
Okay.
And they have a view that nature is a living element that cannot be mercantilized.
Understand. Indigenous, please tell us about the population, how many and which part, how big part is this?
Yeah, well,
indigenous?
As most of Latin America, Bolivia has been colonized by this Spanish kingdom, but that was like 400 or 500 years ago. Conquistadores, exactly. Yes. And therefore there is a mixed population between descendants from Spaniards and also indigenous population. But I would say that nowadays in Bolivia, 60% of the population is of indigenous origin, making that a majority in the country. And therefore,
the population?
It's a population of 10 million.
10 million, well,
yes.
3 times more than us.
Yes.
And 60% of indigenous people. True. And what is the per capita now GDP?
It's like 6,000.
6,000, well,
yes.
A bit higher. And, well, 10,000. How big is the land?
Like 1 million.
1 million?
Yes, square kilometers.
It's 2/3 of our territory.
Right.
And you have Brazil on one hand, Peru on the other hand, Paraguay in the south, right?
That's correct.
And
that's why it's geographically very diverse.
Yeah,
so
and then how you make this landlocked challenges? Do you have that?
There are economic analyses that know that have demonstrated how the landlocked condition taxes into the GDP growth, and it's around 2% of GDP that due to transactional costs related to the landlocked condition. Therefore, really, the integration with our neighboring countries is of critical importance, particularly where do we conduct our exports and imports. And so we are closer to the coast of the Pacific Ocean, but through some rivers, through Paraguay, we can also reach the Atlantic. But that makes, for instance, logistics a very important aspect of our whole economy.
Yes, and you said 2%. The cost of being landlocked is about, in terms of GDP, about 2%. Will you have similar estimation for Mongolian economy?
No, because I really wouldn't dare to give a number like that. And there are different balance of payments in terms of Mongolia, because the main neighbors with which Mongolia has trade, imports and exports, are neighboring countries, and therefore, and that's not necessarily the situation.
This is the same, no, with Brasilia?
Yes, in terms of natural gas, that would be one of the main. So we have pipelines that goes to Brazil and Argentina, and that constitutes a good part of our exports, but not in terms of other commodities or manufactured goods that go either to Asia or to
yes,
the United States.
You have a huge markets around.
Right.
I cannot but ask a question which is quite current issues now in Mongolia about the foreign debt, when the government issues sovereign bond, and with the proceeds they make roads, for example, infrastructure, which was happening in 80s, in particular in Latin America, including Peru, what I know, Mexico, and which later on, remember, they were announcing that they were bankrupt, and it had those 10 years were called lost decades.
Right.
How much it came to your country?
It came. No, the external debt was really a heavy pressure on the national accounts. But I would say that in the last since 1985, the macroeconomic management of Bolivia has been quite responsible. trying to match really the expenditures with the revenues.
Okay.
And so the deficit and the external debt nowadays is not that high. Bolivia was even able to put some bonds into a financial market. But I would say that one of the emphasis of the Bolivian government has been redistribution. And by that, with important social programs, redistributing to the more vulnerable sectors of the population.
Not to everybody,
no,
but on the vulnerable part of the population.
Right, to the elderly, and to the poorest.
And yet you were able to make your economy competitive with the bond proceeds?
Well, yes, because there is kind of a counter-cyclical effect, management of this export commodity boom.
Okay.
And so that's what I would say the overall macroeconomic management has been more responsible.
So along with mining at that time, which was more probably export item,
right.
What was the other industry you were able to make competitive? Other exports, in other words, you are exporting?
Yeah, products. We export natural gas and mining, and also some agricultural products like soybean and coffee. And we have some regional trade agreements that make that trade more easy without any tariffs within the Andean group.
I see, with the Andean group.
Yes, so we have in Colombia and Ecuador important markets for our agricultural products.
In your export composition, how big is the mining?
It's still very much dominated by natural gas.
I see.
And of course, depending on the prices of minerals, minerals have also an important
commodity price.
Yes, but together, natural gas plus minerals makes easily more than 70% of our exports.
Okay, and probably compared to Mongolia, it's quite tropical country, beautiful. Huh?
It is. It's very diverse, as I was saying.
You don't see much this global warming effects.
Oh, definitely we do. Oh yes,
in which way?
We do.
More raining?
No, well, more droughts, more rain.
Okay.
But I come from La Paz, and La Paz is a city that is 3,600 meters above the sea level.
Okay.
It's a very high capital.
Yep.
So our drinking water comes from glaciers that are surrounding the city, very beautiful mountains. And due to climate change and these glaciers are melting at a very alarming speed, putting in a pressure to the capacity to have drinking water and affecting the scenarios and the projections in the next even 5 to 10 years.
So what will you do?
We need public-private partnerships to address that issue.
To accept this melting water, or what, to divert it, or how do you see?
No, we need to build additional dams so as to have not to rely exclusively on the ones that are nowadays providing drinking water to the capital city.
So you want to keep those, and
keep those, of course.
To manage the level and
absolutely.
Some resort type of things, then you just
exactly.
Well, you have a problem because you have a lot of water. This country has a problem because we have a less water, in particular in the south part of the country. And that this global warming comes with big desertation of the south of the country, which is coming north and north and north.
Yes, that is something that we have seen in many countries that are transitioning towards the green economy as well.
Well, this is also a challenge you may face under PAGE.
Absolutely. So let me tell you how did we address this situation in other countries. And I would like to quote the example of Mexico.
Yes.
Where a third of the country is almost a desert, another third is valleys, and another third is very wet.
Mexico, yes.
And so we made projections and scenarios in terms of the cost of retrieving underground water, differentiated the prices by these three geographical zones. And something that the green economy does is really try to internalize the externalities. So many productive activities do make an intense use of water resources, but those resources are not taken into account into the prices of these final products, or for instance, minerals. So the green economy analysis allows you to internalize those externalities and therefore make better informed decisions about investments. And we're trying to show the productive sector that it's important to have a conception of the ecosystem value and to pay for ecosystem services so as to have overall as the economy more sustainable.
Private sector will have some incentives for that.
Well, first it will have the information about how much their operation really costs. Because nowadays there are many costs that are not included, but that are taxing the environment and the capacity of nature to reproduce.
So that's what you will do on that page in Mongolia as well?
Yes, that we will do with land and with water.
Businesses will have a more clear picture of total cost, which was probably not very much estimated before.
Exactly, and we will see also what is the consequence of a business as usual scenario in which things don't change compared to investments to try to address those let's say, more intense use of natural resources, of non-renewable natural
resources. Our concern is now in the south part of the country, where the majority of our deposits are there, say copper, gold, silver, many minerals, and we don't have on the surface water. And all business plan includes to take out water under the ground. So in which way you will disclose the real cost in these cases?
Well, there are calculations for the extraction of those water resources. So and it's also important to make a comparison towards how much does it cost to the overall society divert those water resources to production against consumption. And consumption not only by human beings but also by cattle. And putting numbers to those externalities allow the policymakers make better decisions in terms of the regulations that may request to the companies that are operating in those regions.
If they will listen to these estimations?
Yeah, well, the estimations are important for making policies. But once the policies are enacted, then it's really a decision of the government to make those policies be complied with.
See, probably under the program page, you will again learn more and make analysis, as you said, about other variables, like in Ulaanbaatar city, for example, water, drinking water, and this misuse of drinking water just for washing cars. Or flushing toilets, you know. All this use is just, as you said, BAU, business as usual, goals in this country.
Exactly.
So you will be any consideration around the city of Ulaanbaatar for better use of water?
Yes, we had a workshop in 2 days, for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday this week in Ulaanbaatar, with the participation of a number of ministries and also private sector representatives from the National Chamber of Commerce, plus NGOs and academic institutions from the scientific community and universities in Ulaanbaatar, in Mongolia. And together they have identified priority sectors to address in these analytical tools. Those being, of course, the mining sector, the energy, and urban development. Urban development being one of the priority areas.
Yes.
And within urban development, there are different dimensions to urban development, including waste management, but also water management and transport, and also norms for construction, buildings, and nowadays, the advantage is that in an interconnected world that we are living, it is possible to get the best practices and the technology, to get access to the technology that is being used.
Yes, they can find there is the best practices, more, say, thermal isolation to be better, etc. Technologies is there, but usually they are expensive. And say, under this page, you will make study, you will identify what is to be made, but how to make sure that these are implemented, how to make this, incentives to make sure it does.
That's the very biggest challenge, and not only here, overall in the developing world. And there are countries that may have very good normative frameworks, however, the implementation part is really a challenge. That is why the United Nations stands ready to be, as it has been in the past, a trusted partner of the Mongolian government and the Mongolian people to support the implementation of these measures. We know that it's a long effort that probably will not be done in 6 months or a year.
Yeah,
that will require a sustained...
Plus, this is the first one in the world now.
Indeed. It's the first that has a combined support from 4-5 agencies of the UN. But UNEP has been working in more than 20 countries doing this. And in my previous experience in government, I also know that it's important to have the technical skills, the technical analysis, but also the negotiation capacity with stakeholders to make things happen.
Do you have any identified source of fund? Have you already got commitment from these 5 agencies to invest certain money, and how does it work? How in terms of finance?
Yes, of course, for the first analytical part that is covered with the funds that are providing these agencies. But for the implementation of the policies, we will need a concerted effort from the government because the resources usually come from within the economy. But also from the private sector, because without the participation of the private sector, this change will not be possible, and the international community. We had also a meeting with development partners that include bilaterals and multilaterals, including the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank, to coordinate our efforts to support the Mongolian implementation of the Green Development Strategy.
Have you estimated the total or approximate cost of the total project?
Not yet. That is precisely the result that we want to expect according to the goals. And here, when you deal with scenarios, you can have scenarios that are more conservative.
Correct.
Or scenarios that are more aggressive.
Optimal, pessimistic.
Exactly.
In terms of time, how many years you visualize?
I visualize a sustained effort of 3 to 5 years.
So from 3 to 5 years, you will be able, under the project, identify, formulate the tasks
and implement.
We have to take over and implement partially. To start.
Yes. And
then after you will see will you continue or not.
Indeed, and you know when you do public policy, there is a time lag between the enaction of the policy and the time when you see the effects. And so we need to take that into account, and that is in fact how it works. So the results will be seen in the midterm, but we are ensuring that the next generation definitely will benefit from the type of living that we are still enjoying today.
Indeed, and I think ordinary Mongolians are happy to see the very well-known, respected UN agencies coming with your own procedures, standards, technical, for example, so in particular this UNITA, right, institution, institution for training and research, right?
Correct.
This institution is probably first time in the country, to my knowledge.
Yes.
And this certainly, I think it will improve efficiency of our public government, and of course, living standard for the people. Yes. Contribution, at least.
I think there are 2 big challenges to transform the Mongolian economy towards a green economy. First is, as you said, efficiency. I mean, there are areas in which we will need to optimize various processes, how the energy is being produced, how the energy is being transmitted,
correct.
How the industries are working. So there is a large room for improvement in terms of optimization and efficiency.
Quite much.
But the other side is innovation.
Yes.
And for innovation, we will need the support of the population.
Yes.
Because we need to engage into more sustainable consumption and
Yes.
production patterns.
Yes.
And that will need to imply some changes of habits of,
Yes.
to be able to enjoy this glass of water
Yes.
also in the future.
Mr. Garcia, I suggest we get together again in 2 years. You are the head of the project and you will be coming to this country. Let's discuss the process in 2 years.
Fantastic.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.